John, thank you very much indeed, and I'm delighted to be back at this conference once again. That it doesn't seem like 12 months since I was here before. I think I set out at that conference a range of things which we would do over the coming year, and I think we can come to the end of this year having delivered on them. And I think it's a combination of the enthusiasm which we find in this industry, I hope for the engagement which you find from government, which is truly putting this country back on the nuclear map. I know you've had a fascinating conference. I know you've had some wonderful speakers. I think being Minister of Energy must be one of the best jobs you could possibly have. But if I wasn't going to be Minister of Energy, I would like to have been Professor of Geoscience Communications in the School of Earth, Ocean and Environmental Science. And to have Ian Stewart here as well today, I know is a tremendous benefit to this conference. But I want to start by what is clearly the most important issue which has overshadowed the nuclear industry this year, and the events in Fukushima, and what happened since, and the attitude in different countries. Some countries decided that that was the moment when they should scale back or pull away from their nuclear future. We decided to take a different approach. We decided the most important thing was to get the facts. And that's why we appointed Mike Waitman, one of the foremost authorities in the world, to look into the lessons which could be learned from Fukushima, and to see what that meant in terms of a new nuclear policy going forward in Britain. His interim report came to us in the summer. His final report came to us recently and published in the last few days, which sets out his recommendations for the way forward. It was our final response to those, which has just been published. I'm incredibly grateful to Mike for the work which he did. But there was one clear message from that, which was there was nothing which had happened there which should stop us having a nuclear ambition in Britain. That it was, of course, a terrible incident and tragedy, but the lessons which we can learn in terms of manning and in terms of some of the other issues which we will address, we can do. But there was nothing which was a game changer in terms of the role which nuclear can play in our energy mix going forward. And it reconfirms our view that it should be our aim to be the #1 place for nuclear investment anywhere. And that's an incredible ambition. It's less than 5 years since John published his white paper, which said that nuclear should be part of the future again. And to move from a situation where nuclear was not on the agenda in this country to being one of the most exciting places in the world for new nuclear investment is an extraordinary rate of progress. And it wouldn't have happened without John, and I think we owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude, and I think it's wonderful he's taken on the role which he has in this organisation. We have, though, as I say, I hope, made significant progress in 2011. We started off by defending the legal challenge against the Secretary of State with regard to the 2 nuclear reactor designs. Those reactor designs, the regulatory justification process, went through Parliament with a majority of 520 to 20. It was one of the biggest margins we've ever seen in recent years on any issue. And it shows the extent to which this industry and the importance of the nuclear renaissance in this country has cross-party support. But it also showed us, when we were able to fight off those legal challenges, that we were right to take a cautious, studied approach to these things. We need to get our casework right, because we know we will face legal challenges, but we have to be certain that the approach which we're taking is robust and will stand up to the closest scrutiny in the courts of this country. Then in July, we published the national policy statements. We pushed them through the parliamentary process, and of course that included the 8 suitable sites for new nuclear development in this country. And again, that was approved by Parliament with an overwhelming majority. And so another key landmark in this process had been resolved. We've set up the Office of Nuclear Regulation, as you told us in industry you wanted to do, in order to have a regulator specifically focus on the issues of this sector, which could not be having its resources diverted off to deal with other issues elsewhere. And that's been launched now as an agency of the Health and Safety Executive. That happened in April, and we're now going to be taking forward the legislation to create a new independent statutory body. Whilst that's been happening, the regulators themselves have been continuing to work with the GDA process, and they'll be seeing interim decisions from that in the next couple of weeks. We'll also, in the next few weeks, be publishing the funded decommissioning programme guidance and the final waste transfer pricing methodology, and that will happen later this month before Christmas. And this will ensure that operators make secure financial provision for their liabilities from the outset, in line with the government's policy that there should be no subsidy for nuclear. So all of those are part of the process of saying that Britain is open for business in the nuclear sector. And the investors know that. The companies which are serious about nuclear investment around the world are looking at the United Kingdom. And it was a great moment when EDF trucked off 80,000 pages of submission under the new slimmed-down planning regime to the IPC, and to have that accepted in the course of the last few days, so that they can then start the groundworks in the course of the coming weeks at Hinkley Point. But it's not just EDF, it's seeing the work which Horizon and NuGen are going to be doing at Wilver and at Moorside. So this is a country where nuclear is very firmly back on the agenda. But we can only deliver that through a spirit of partnership. And that's why we need to consistently and coherently work together to overcome any barriers which we find. Whilst government is nearing the completion of its facilitative actions to encourage investment in the United Kingdom, our role doesn't stop there. We can do more to make the conditions right and to make this an attractive place to invest. And to us, part of the starting point for that was to recognise that our market structure was no longer fit for purpose. And as we set out in the White Paper in July, we're now introducing a package of reforms to ensure that we can get investment in secure, low-carbon, affordable energy. This is the biggest change in the electricity market in a generation, but it's fundamental to securing the sort of levels of investment which are going to be necessary in this industry. We know too, and I've heard other speakers saying this, that nuclear is important for the economy. We shouldn't just be looking at this as a source of electricity for powering our homes and businesses. This is an incredible growth sector in its own right. Every single new nuclear power station, 5,000 jobs or more, and many more jobs in the long-term running operations of it. This is an entirely new industrial sector being created in the United Kingdom when people had thought that the nuclear age may have come to a conclusion. On Tuesday, the Chancellor announced the National Infrastructure Plan for 2011, which is at the heart of the government's approach to encouraging economic growth. And it sets out for the first time the government's plans for addressing longer-term challenges for major infrastructure developments, including energy projects. And most importantly, it sets out further measures to support private finance for infrastructure and further reforms to the planning and consenting regime to support sustainable economic development. The Growth Review, published earlier this week, supports the investment in skills that are necessary to allow the UK workforce to utilise the high-skilled jobs that the new build programme will bring. And every university which I go to around the country, I'm now encouraged beyond belief by the extent to which they are looking at this industry as a new, exciting growth area. The number of courses which are opening up, the cooperation which I recently launched between Bristol and Oxford universities for a nuclear centre of excellence, that the universities in our country, the colleges in our country, are recognising the opportunity which is here and determined to make sure they can rise up to this. But as part of the announcements this week, one of the most important changes was that giving power back to employers, with £250 million being provided to employers so that you can develop the skills which you need. So not government thinking, what do we think are the skills which you need, but you identifying those and ensuring that they can be provided. And in that work you are supported by a wonderful organisation through the National Skills Academy for Nuclear, which is creative in coming forward with ideas and which is making a real progress in making sure that young people can see this as an opportunity for a well-remunerated lifetime's career in an important sector. I'm pleased that the industry is looking at a 3-year funding model to support the work of the Academy and is signing up to the Skills Passport to standardise the recording of training across the industry. And I want to see this continue. And I want to encourage all employers who are not yet part of that process to get involved, because we all collectively have a shared interest in making sure that the people with the right skills are there at the time when they're going to be needed. We've set up the Nuclear Energy Skills Alliance to help coordinate key skills bodies to work collaboratively to address the skill needs of the nuclear industry. And this will agree a common action plan to address the skills gaps. And we urge you again to support this work as it goes forward. And we're looking at other ways in which we can ensure that business in the United Kingdom is able to make the most of the opportunities available to the global civil nuclear industry as they look to invest here in Britain. New Build Nuclear provides the UK supply chain with enormous opportunities, and we need to make sure that they have the chances to seize these chances whilst they're there. We need to work with the industry to ensure it can sustain multiple concurrent building projects. And to do this, we need a programme management approach. And that's why I'm so delighted with the new organisation which Lord Hutton is setting up with the NIA to help businesses develop common approaches and to identify constraints early in the process. This would ensure greater opportunity for businesses in this country to create jobs and to create better management of the resources, and as well as greater confidence that operators can deliver on time and on budget. But just because it's 25 years since we last commissioned a nuclear power station in Britain doesn't mean that we can't be global leaders in the technology even as it stands today. You heard just now from Professor Paul Howarth about the outstanding work which is done at the National Nuclear Laboratory. We, I think, lead the world in terms of regulatory approach and the trust which can be put in that regulatory management system. We've got some in the City of London, some of the best people involved in the financing of energy projects, of the insuring of energy projects, of the legal work which goes with it. There are many areas outside the traditional nuclear sector where we can see economic opportunities for our country, which we're keen to make sure we realise. But nevertheless, in other countries we've seen a different approach. In Germany, Italy and Switzerland, they've decided to phase out nuclear power post-Fukushima. Others, like France, Finland, China and the United States, have chosen to take the same path that Britain has done, because we see the importance of working alongside other countries to promote the worldwide benefits of nuclear power, not just for the energy security and climate change objectives, but for the economic opportunities which it brings and for the benefit of consumers as well. These are tough times across the world economically, and we recognise the difficulties that investors face in making tough financial decisions. And we constantly recognise that as global companies you can choose to go wherever you want in the world, and we have to make it more attractive for you to come here than to go elsewhere. So that's why, again, the work of Mike Waitman has been so important. Mike led the work for the IAEA in their fact-finding mission to Japan to identify the lessons that can be learned. And this has led to the development of the IAEA's action plan, where the United Kingdom, alongside our international partners, will continue to work together to make continuous improvements on nuclear safety. And then look at our approach for this, which isn't a tick-box regime. It's not some inspector going around and saying, yes, that's all right, but it may be out of date a while later. It's of continually improving standards. And we think that that is a message which, again, we can take internationally as the right way to do it. But we're working closely with other nations as well, because we recognise there's always things which we can learn from each other. And in particular, we're working closely with France to expand our cooperation so that we can respond to present and future energy challenges in a responsible way. We want to maximise opportunities to create a competitive supply chain capable of serving global opportunities. So British companies working with international developers to realise the opportunities which are there. And I'm confident that very shortly we'll be seeing some important announcements to show how this can be taken forward. But at the same time, this is not just about the nuclear new build programme. It's important to recognise that whilst we push ahead with that new build programme, we need to be clear that new nuclear can't happen without us dealing properly with the legacy of the current nuclear industry. And that's why Chris Huhne, in a speech recently at the Royal Society, emphasised the importance of learning the lessons from the past, particularly with dealing with our nuclear liabilities. And it's a constant issue for us that within DEC, 1/2 of our spending, rising to 2/3, is on nuclear clean-up from the issues of the past. So this is something which we are dedicating more resources to. Even in tough economic times, we've been able to increase the budget there. We're increasing the budget, as I say, but it's an issue, whilst we get to grips with it, is going to take many years. And so in our quest to deliver new nuclear, we can't forget that collective responsibility. because I think that's absolutely fundamental in retaining public support and trust for a new nuclear programme. And I think that the government, the media, the whole of the industry have collectively acted extremely responsibly post-Fukushima to make sure that we dealt with this in a sensible and constructive way. And I think that's reflected in the recent opinion polls, which show that public support for nuclear in the United Kingdom hasn't dipped as it has elsewhere. Indeed, some of the polls show that it's grown. But we do have to drive forward that programme to work with the legacy. So today we published the government's response to the public consultation on the long-term management of the UK's existing civil plutonium stocks. The government considers that reuse as MOX fuel is the best available option to manage the UK's plutonium. And bear in mind that with 112 tonnes of plutonium, we have more of this than any other country in the world. We will now work to take this forward to the next phase, to determine whether our preferred option can be implemented safely and securely in a way that is affordable, deliverable, and offers value for money for taxpayers. Only then will we be in a position to make a decision to proceed with the procurement of a new MOX plant. While converting the plutonium into MOX is the most credible and technologically mature option, we do remain open to any alternative proposals for plutonium management that offer better value to the taxpayer, and will seek to gather more data on all the options. And I want to thank the NDA for their advice, which has been helpful to us and critical to us in developing this policy. Acting responsibly also means dealing with the waste. Last week, the West Cumbrian Managing Radioactive Waste Safely Partnership launched its consultation on participating in the next stages of the process to find a site for geological disposal. This will support local authorities in making an informed decision next year about whether to proceed, because the voluntarist principle is fundamental to the whole approach which we're taking. The local authorities in Cumbria have shown, I think, incredibly strong leadership to engage constructively with the public, with the NDA, with regulators and government on these important issues. And I believe that spirit of partnership is our best way of taking this forward to a successful conclusion. And so my final comments is this. It comes back to this whole issue of partnership. How we manage our nuclear legacy, how we make continuous improvements in the safety of nuclear power stations, how we maintain public support and deliver a new build agenda for the coming years. It all requires partnerships at all levels of government, with industry, with the regulators, in others. It's not just down to government. We can't do this on our own, but we can create the framework in which you can choose to invest here. The energy companies, I think, are showing real enthusiasm for the opportunities which are here in Britain, and we want to work with you to drive forward those nuclear ambitions. This is one of the greatest energy opportunities that we will ever see in our lifetimes, that it offers the opportunity to set Britain on a different course for the future. And my ambition is that through the work which we collectively are doing, is that we can make Britain a serious nuclear nation once again. Thank you very much.